On a bright afternoon outside Buckingham Palace, the air was thick with the usual hum of tourists snapping photos and marveling at the grandeur of British tradition. Sergeant Thomas Harrow, a royal guardsman clad in his immaculate scarlet tunic and towering bearskin hat, stood as a living emblem of centuries-old discipline, his posture rigid, his gaze fixed, a silent testament to duty. The crowd buzzed with quiet awe, soaking in the history of the moment. That is, until Brad stumbled onto the scene. In his late 30s, beer can clutched in one hand, he swaggered forward like a man who'd mistaken London for a tailgate party. His MAGA hat, weathered from too many barbecues, sat crooked atop his head, while his Hawaiian shirt, a garish clash of colors, seemed to scream louder than he did. With every unsteady step, he punctuated the air with a slurred, booming chant. USA! USA! The crowd's reaction was predictable. Disapproving frowns from some, hesitant chuckles from others. But Brad, fueled by alcohol and a bloated sense of entitlement, took it as a green light. To him, this wasn't just a visit. It was his personal stage, and the guardsman wasn't a soldier deserving respect, but a prop in his vacation story. "Hey, buddy, smile for the camera," he hollered, waving his beer like a microphone, his voice cutting through the murmurs. When Harrow didn't flinch, Brad pressed closer, mocking the guard's stiff salute and nearly toppling over in the process. "Too good to say hi? I'll loosen you up," he sneered, arrogance dripping from every word. The tension thickened as he escalated further, tossing coins at Harrow's feet, each clink a taunt, a childish dare. "Come on, big guy, do something!" The crowd winced, some whispering in disbelief at the audacity. Who does that? Who mistakes a symbol of honor for a carnival game? In Brad's muddled, drunken mind, this was all part of the experience he'd paid for, a chance to poke at tradition like it was a piñata. His ultimate act of disrespect came when, with a reckless grin, he charged forward, arms outstretched, and leaped to ride the guardsman like a horse, shouting, "Yee-haw!" It was a shocking display of ignorance, a drunken tourist crossing every line of decency, leaving the crowd, and soon the internet, stunned at the sheer gall of it all. Amid the splendor of Buckingham Palace on a sunlit London afternoon, Sergeant Thomas Harrow stood like a pillar of British tradition. Dressed in his pristine scarlet tunic and iconic bearskin hat, he exuded an unshakable dignity that stretched back centuries. A quiet, stoic figure amid a sea of clicking cameras and murmuring tourists. His role wasn't just a job, it was a legacy, one he carried with a steady gaze and an unwavering stance, even as the crowd buzzed around him. Then came Brad, a drunken tourist whose slurred chants of USA, USA shattered the calm. Swaggering forward with a beer in hand, his Hawaiian shirt blazing and his MAGA hat askew, Brad saw Harrow not as a soldier, but as a target for his antics. "Smile for the camera," he bellowed, stumbling closer, his voice a grating intrusion. Yet Harrow didn't blink. His training held him like steel, a wall against the absurdity. Brad mocked his posture, tossed coins at his feet with taunts of, "Do something," and even charged forward, leaping to ride him like a pony, shouting, "Yeehaw!" Through it all, Harrow remained a monument of discipline. The crowd saw it, the faint twitch in his jaw, the slightest tightening of his expression, but his composure never cracked. Years of drills and duty had forged him for moments like this, far beyond the petty provocations of a tourist lost in a drunken haze. When the situation demanded it, he stepped back with precision and barked, "Step away now," his voice a sharp, authoritative thunder that froze Brad mid-stumble. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Harrow wasn't done. Breaking his sacred silence, he fixed Brad with a piercing stare and spoke, low and resolute. "This is not a game or a joke. You dishonor yourself and your country." Those words cut through the chaos, a measured rebuke from a man who embodied restraint. As an officer hauled Brad away, Harrow adjusted his hat with a calm, practiced motion and returned to his post, unshaken. His professionalism wasn't just in standing still, it was in knowing when to act, a quiet triumph of duty over idiocy. Later praised by his commanding officer, Harrow stood tall on his next shift, a silent guardian whose stoicism left an indelible mark on all who witnessed it. It was a picture-perfect afternoon at Buckingham Palace, the kind where the sun glints off the golden stone and tourists gather to capture a slice of British history. Sergeant Thomas Harrow, a royal guardsman in his crisp scarlet tunic and towering bearskin hat, stood motionless, a living symbol of tradition that drew quiet murmurs of awe from the crowd. Cameras clicked, voices hummed with excitement, and the scene felt serene until Brad lurched into view. Late 30s, beer in hand, his Hawaiian shirt screaming for attention, and his weathered MAGA hat perched crookedly, he staggered forward with a slurred, booming, "USA! USA!" The crowd's initial reaction was a mixed bag. Some furrowed their brows in disapproval, others let out hesitant chuckles, unsure if this was a joke gone too far. Brad, though, soaked it up like applause, his drunken bravado egging him on. In his mind, he wasn't just another tourist. He was the star, and Harrow was a prop to poke at. "Hey, buddy, smile for the camera," he hollered, waving his beer like a baton. The guardsman didn't flinch, but the air thickened with tension as Brad closed in, mocking Harrow's stiff salute and nearly toppling over. "Too stiff? I'll loosen you up," he sneered, and the crowd groaned. Some shook their heads, a woman whispering, "It's like watching a train wreck." The escalation kicked up a notch when Brad dug into his pocket, tossing coins at Harrow's feet. Each clink met with a taunt. "Come on, big guy, do something." A few muffled laughs rippled through, but most onlookers swapped looks of disbelief. Who does that? The mood shifted, unease settling in as Brad's antics grew bolder. Then came the breaking point. With a reckless grin, he bellowed, "If you won't move, I'll make you," and charged, arms outstretched, leaping to ride Harrow like a carnival pony, shouting, "Yee-haw!" The crowd gasped in unison, a collective jolt of shock at the sheer audacity. Phones shot up, capturing the chaos, as jaws dropped and murmurs turned to stunned silence. But when Harrow stepped back and barked, "Step away now," his voice slicing through the square, the tide turned. Brad froze, his swagger draining away, and the crowd erupted in cheers, a wave of relief and admiration washing over them. What started as awkward amusement had morphed into outright rejection of Brad's foolishness. When Harrow broke his stoic silence to reprimand him, "This is not a game or a joke," the onlookers held their breath, then rallied behind him. "Go home, you idiot!" someone shouted, and the sentiment spread like wildfire. "You're a disgrace!" The once divided crowd now stood united, their applause a ringing endorsement of dignity over idiocy. As an officer hauled Brad off, the clapping wasn't just for Harrow, it was for the shared relief that respect had won out, a reaction that echoed from the square to the viral video that followed. The scene at Buckingham Palace had unraveled in a flash. A drunken tourist named Brad, fueled by beer and bravado, had turned a tranquil afternoon into a spectacle of disrespect. Clad in a loud Hawaiian shirt and a faded MAGA hat, he'd swaggered up to Sergeant Thomas Harrow, a royal guardsman standing sentinel in his scarlet tunic and bearskin hat, and treated him like a carnival ride. From taunts and tossed coins to a wild leap with a "yeehaw," Brad's antics had pushed every boundary. But when Harrow stepped back and commanded, "Step away now," his voice a steel-edged rebuke, the tide turned. Brad's swagger crumpled, his face drained of color, and as an officer closed in, the crowd's cheers signaled the end of his reckless show. That might have been the end of it, a fleeting embarrassment in London Square, but the phones held high by onlookers ensured it wouldn't stay there. Within hours, the video hit the internet, spreading faster than wildfire across social media. Views piled up, and with them came the backlash. Online, people didn't hold back. Brad's actions were dissected and condemned, his "USA, USA" chants and coin-tossing branded as the epitome of ugly tourism. "Who thinks that's okay?" one commenter fumed, while another quipped, "This is why we can't have nice things." The debate swelled. Some saw him as a lone fool, others as a symbol of cultural arrogance run amok. For those who'd winced at the scene, it was a cringeworthy reminder of how a few can tarnish a nation's image. Meanwhile, holed up in his hotel room, Brad watched the storm unfold. The clip looped endlessly, his stumble, Harrow's piercing words, "You dishonor yourself and your country," and the crowd's shouts of, "Go home, you idiot!" Sweat beading on his brow, he saw his bravado reduced to a public unraveling. His slurred attempt at an apology on site, "Hey, sorry, man," had fallen flat. But now facing a digital mob, he knew he couldn't dodge the reckoning. So he posted a public mea culpa, his words clumsy but contrite. "I was disrespectful. I'll learn about the cultures I visit." It was a humbling fall from the guy who'd seen Harrow as a prop, a lesson etched in viral infamy. The backlash didn't just bury Brad, it elevated Harrow, whose professionalism became the story's silver lining. Online, folks praised his restraint, his quiet triumph over absurdity. "That guard's a legend," one tweet read, while others shared the clip as a masterclass in dignity. Brad's consequences weren't just personal. They sparked a broader conversation about respect abroad. A ripple effect felt from London to living rooms worldwide. As the dust settled, he slunk away, a humbled figure, while the internet churned on, debating the line between freedom and folly, all thanks to a moment caught on camera. Under the golden glow of a London afternoon, Buckingham Palace stood as a monument to history, its quiet majesty mirrored by Sergeant Thomas Harrow. A royal guardsman in his impeccable scarlet tunic and bearskin hat, he was more than a figure on duty. He was a guardian of centuries-old British tradition, his stillness a testament to discipline amid the chatter of tourists. That calm was shattered when Brad, a drunken American in a garish Hawaiian shirt and MAGA hat, stumbled into the scene, beer in hand and "USA, USA" on his lips. What began as taunts, "Smile for the camera," escalated to tossed coins and a brazen attempt to ride Harrow like a pony, complete with a slurred "Yee-haw!" The crowd gasped, phones capturing the chaos, but Harrow's response turned the tide. With a soldier's precision, he stepped back and commanded, "Step away now!" His voice a sharp crack that stopped Brad cold. Then, in a rare break from stoic silence, he fixed the tourist with a steely gaze and declared, "This is not a game or a joke. You dishonor yourself and your country." Those words, steady and resolute, silenced the square, a piercing affirmation of dignity over disrespect. The crowd, once torn between amusement and unease, erupted in applause, their cheers a resounding vote for Harrow's honor. As an officer dragged Brad away, his bravado reduced to a guilty slouch, Harrow adjusted his hat with a calm, practiced motion and resumed his post, as if the absurdity had never happened. That moment of triumph didn't fade with the day. The video went viral, and online, Harrow's restraint earned praise as a masterclass in professionalism, while Brad's apology underscored the lesson learned. Back at the palace, his commanding officer commended his exemplary conduct, a quiet nod to the strength he'd shown. On his next shift, Harrow stood tall again, the same unwavering figure, but now with a crowd that carried a new respect. They'd seen tradition tested and prevail, not through force but through the sheer power of composure. Brad's folly had been a fleeting disruption. Harrow's dignity was the lasting story, a silent victory that echoed beyond the square. A reminder that some things, like honor and heritage, stand firm no matter the challenge. In that triumph, tradition shone brighter than ever. On a sun-drenched afternoon at Buckingham Palace, what began as a routine day spiraled into a moment that would ripple far beyond the cobblestone square. Sergeant Thomas Harrow, a royal guardsman in his pristine scarlet tunic and bearskin hat, stood as a stoic emblem of British tradition, his presence a quiet draw. For tourists snapping photos, enter Brad, a late-30s American, beer in hand, his Hawaiian shirt clashing with the scene, and his MAGA hat tilted from too many barbecues, his slurred chants of "USA, USA," and escalating antics, taunting Harrow, tossing coins and leaping to "ride him with a yee-haw," turned heads and raised phones. The crowd's gasp met Harrow's sharp command, "Step away now," and his piercing rebuke, "This is not a game or a joke." Brad's bravado collapsed. An officer hauled him off, and the applause that followed seemed to seal the moment. But it didn't end there. Those raised phones had captured every second, and by dusk the video was online, racing across platforms like wildfire. Views climbed into the millions, and with them came a flood of reactions. Outrage at Brad's disrespect, praise for Harrow's dignity, and debates about what it all meant. "Typical tourist clown," one comment read. "That guard's a hero," another gushed. The viral clip shaped perceptions overnight. Brad became a cautionary tale of entitlement, his half-hearted hotel room apology. "I'll learn about cultures," a footnote to his public shaming. Harrow, meanwhile, emerged as a symbol of grace under pressure, his commanding officer's commendation amplifying the story's reach. The internet churned, dissecting every angle: cultural respect, national stereotypes, the line between humor and humiliation. For some it was a laughable blunder, for others a deeper lesson about behavior abroad. That single moment, frozen in pixels, didn't just entertain, it educated, provoked, and polarized. As Harrow returned to his post the next day, the new crowd carried a subtle awareness, their whispers tinged with the weight of what they'd seen online. Brad faded into obscurity, but the video lingered, a testament to how a fleeting act, caught on camera, can ignite a global conversation, reshaping how we see ourselves and others in an instant. Life teaches us that respect isn't just a courtesy, it's a bridge between people, especially when we step into someone else's world. The story of a drunken tourist disrupting a royal guardsman at Buckingham Palace reminds us how quickly thoughtlessness can unravel dignity. At our age, we've learned that a moment's folly, like shouting or mocking what we don't understand, can echo far beyond the scene thanks to today's cameras and screens. But there's a deeper lesson here. Staying steady under pressure, as that guardsman did, is a strength worth cultivating. We've all faced our share of provocations, loud neighbors, rude strangers, but holding our ground with grace often speaks louder than words. And when mistakes happen, as they did with that tourist's humbled apology, owning them is the first step to moving forward. For us, nearing or past 40, this isn't just about travel etiquette. It's about living with purpose, respecting others' traditions, keeping our cool, and learning from our missteps aren't just rules. They're the quiet legacy we leave, whether in London squares or our own backyards.